Quick video today, guys. Lately, I've been asked a few questions and some things I didn't realize people didn't know the answer to. I do a lot of buying and selling. I meet a lot of people along the way, and then when they find out I have a YouTube channel, the questions, it's turned into a conversation. So I thought I would share some of them with you guys and see what you knew. So let's get started. All right. So the first thing I didn't realize people didn't know is if you buy Godox, and everybody loves Godox. They're my favorite lighting company, I believe, of all of them. They make some great equipment. This will say Godox on the bottom, and that's fine. But now, if you're shopping at Adorama in New York City, you're going to find something called Flashpoint, and it's going to look identical to the Godox product you're looking for. It looks identical because it is identical. The only advantage is a warranty. You get the same warranty and length of time, I'm pretty sure, but if you have a problem with your Flashpoint, to get a repair, you just send it back to New York. If you have a repair problem with Godox, it's got to go back, I believe, back to China. Don't quote me on that, but it takes a little bit longer. So yes, Flashpoint and Godox are the same. They intermix. They're the same thing, just a different shell with a different name on it. So anyway, guys, I didn't realize so many people didn't know that. So just know that Flashpoint and Godox, same thing. Moving on, one of the next questions I get so often is, what does manual mode mean, and do I have to learn it? Well, no, you don't have to learn it. You don't really have to do anything. But if you want to know a little bit more about manual, you've got settings right here on your camera. Right up here, you've probably seen all these. Now, some of you guys I know are brand new, and some of you have been doing this for a long time, so I'll try to answer this more for beginners. So on the top of your camera, you'll see a setting. It'll have a bunch of letters by it. And if you see M, that's manual. That means you're going to be controlling everything. Your ISO, your shutter, your aperture, everything is controlled by you. And that gives you a lot of control over everything in the image. But the problem with that comes if you don't know every setting really well. There's another setting called aperture priority. And you can choose aperture priority and be just fine. What that does is, if you want to have something out of focus and you're focusing on something and to get a blurry background, you want to go down to as low as the lens will go, 2.8, 1.4, whatever it do. Set it on there and let the camera choose everything else. Nothing wrong with doing that. Photographers use that all the time. And there's also a shutter priority, where if you're trying to stop a car driving by at 180 miles an hour, turn your shutter speed up and let the camera do the rest of it. So it kind of depends on the knowledge that you've got to what setting that you need. There's no one correct way of doing it. If I'm shooting a wedding, by the end of the day, I've gone through about every setting you can possibly imagine. Try to stay on manual because you get the most control over that, but sometimes it's easier to just flip it over to aperture priority or shutter priority. It doesn't mean that you're less of a photographer if you do that. It just means you're getting a little help from your camera, and there's nothing wrong with that. Most people, if you are in the process of learning and you're learning aperture priority and shutter priority, work your way on up to manual, because it's good to know how to do manual. So, but no, you don't have to know how to do manual, but it will help so that you can control absolutely everything in the shot. What gear do I need to achieve great photos? Well, it's not really so much about the gear. You can go buy any brand of camera, any major brand of camera, Canon, Nikon, Sony, Lumix, you name it. If you buy a camera where you can change the lens and you can change the settings on the camera, you can learn with that camera. Now, there will be lenses that you'll need. Definitely the first one I would recommend is the 50 millimeter. They call it a nifty 50. It's available on every camera ever made. It'll be probably the cheapest lens you can find, and you can get a lot of benefit for it. Hence the term nifty 50. It's good in every category. It's kind of depends on what you want to do in photography beyond that. I'll tell you what I would suggest other than, say, wildlife. Wildlife, you need some long zooms, but for regular photographers, I would suggest like a 24 millimeter wide, a 35 millimeter, a 50, and an 85. That will get you started a lot. Or you can choose the route to go like with this is the equivalent of a 24 to 70 lens right here. So you can go with a zoom, but you have to watch your zooms, because if you're buying a 35 millimeter that's, say, a 35 millimeter 2.0, and you get a zoom lens that's, say, 24 to 70, it might start at the 24 end at 2.8, but it might go to f4, 5, 6, or whatever on the long end. So you got to watch for lenses that will change as you zoom in and out, but that's going to come at a price. They're called prime lenses, are lenses that are set 24, 35, 50. You can't zoom in and out with them. You zoom in and out with those by using your feet. If you want to buy a zoom lens, you can get them. You can get them cheap, but they're going to not be as good a quality because of the way the f-stop works. Now, you can buy them a 24 to 70, 2.8 all the way through, but you're going to pay a lot of money for that. So it really depends on what you want to do. If you're wanting to get into shooting weddings, again, I've always said this, you watch my videos, make sure you're working with another photographer for at least a year. If you're just learning the cameras and the gear that you want to get, let's say you've been at it for about a year and you've decided you really like it and want to get into it further, I would really recommend any of the branded cameras. I use Lumix right now. I spent 40-something years using Canon. Any of the brands are fine. I know everybody likes to argue about them. Everybody's got their favorite brand, but really, bottom line, any of the cameras are going to be fine. So you want that 24 wide. A 35 is not quite as wide, but there's enough difference between a 24 and a 35 prime lens that you'd want to go with a 35. 50 millimeter and an 85 is good for portraits. Now, they've also got 100 millimeter lens. I'd probably avoid that one for a while because it's expensive and kind of need to know exactly what field you want to do before I jump into a 100 or a 135 by itself. They make a 70 to 200, which is a popular prime. You can get those like a 70 to 200 f4 for probably $1,200. But if you go 70 to 200, it drops down to 2.8. You're going to be upwards of probably a little over $2,000. Again, depending on who makes them. And depending on the mount, when I say mount, it's whatever camera you've got. Like I've got Lumix, so I can run all different kinds of lenses on the front. There are different lenses you can buy. And the name brand lenses are usually going to be the most expensive. And for years and years, there was still a company, they're a great company, called Sigma. And that used to be everybody's kind of backup. If there wasn't that Canon lens that you wanted, you went with Sigma. Sigma was always known as the best secondary lens. Well, Sigma has actually, in my opinion, gotten so good that some of their stuff has surpassed the name brand lenses, but so has their prices. I love Sigma. I've used Sigma for so long. They make some of my favorite lenses. I had a Canon 24 to 105 f4 Sigma, but one of my favorite lenses ever. That was a workhorse, do everything lens. But there are other lenses out there right now. There's a company called Meike, M-I-E-K-E, and they have some amazing prices on their gear. Check that company and see if they have anything that fits your camera. You can always buy used gear. KEHMPB.com are good. They sell used gear. Adorama sells a lot of used gear, a lot of good used gear too, and it'll come with a warranty. Now, if you're wanting to go buy from a person, of course, you're taking a risk when you do that because you don't know whether the lens is good or not, and you're also exchanging a lot of money with somebody that you don't know, so I don't highly recommend that. If you do that, always take somebody with you. That's what I try to do because we don't want anybody to get hurt, and we live in some pretty crazy times. So be careful if you're meeting somebody and you've got a lot of cash on you or vice versa. Anyway, I would recommend those lenses to start out. Now, if you're doing, like bird photography or whatever, you will want to get into longer zooms. I won't get into that right now, but you'd probably want to be upwards of 400 millimeter or so, and those lenses get expensive in a hurry. So hope that helped you out. What is the difference between JPEG and RAW? Well, when your camera is shooting pictures, you're capturing them on your memory card. You're capturing them on here, on a little memory card. And I shoot RAW and JPEG at the same time. And I don't really know why, because I hardly ever use the JPEGs. If you're doing weddings and stuff that's important, stuff you're getting paid for, would definitely recommend shooting RAW, because what that does is the camera captures the data and you do the processing. There's a lot more leeway to mess up if you're shooting in RAW. So you messed up with your exposure by 2 stops, you can make it look just fine if you're shooting RAW. But if you're shooting just JPEG, what happens is your camera is going to do the processing on it, and it will give you an image called a JPEG. You can edit those somewhat, but not near as much as you can edit a RAW picture. So if you're doing something for money, something fast-paced, you don't always have the chance to make sure you got the exposure nailed, definitely 100% shoot RAW. And yes, you do need special software to open RAW. Camera Raw, Photoshop. all that will be fine. Just make sure that you've got something to open raw with it, because once you get your raws open, you're going to edit them. And then generally what I do is once I get them edited, I turn them into JPEGs, because that's what labs and stuff take. And then I save all the raw images. But raw just gives you the most big, it's going to be a much bigger file than a JPEG, and it's going to take up a lot more room. You're going to have a little faster computer to make them run faster, but it's going to be worth it in the end because it gives you so much room for error. And when you're getting paid, you want your pictures to look as good as possible. What gear do I use? A couple people have asked me this. Well, for over 40 years, I used Canon. My first camera was a Canon AE1 program. I think that was 1983. And I went through all the years. I went to the Canon T90, came out, I think it was 1988. I thought that was the coolest camera ever. It was kind of advanced for its time. I've been trying to find one so I could show you guys this Canon T90, because I know some of you guys that were born in the 90s and early 2000s have never seen a film camera like the Canon T90. It was just super cool if you had one in the 80s. After all that, in the 90s, we spent a lot of time shooting Mamiya 645 for a lot of weddings, and we would shoot Canon for receptions a lot of times, backup, have the 35 millimeter Canon as a backup for the Mamiya 645. Then when digital came along, the very first digital camera I bought was some Olympus. I think it was 3 megapixels. It was just, when digital first came out, it was a disaster because they didn't know really how to make them. It was a 3 megapixel camera. Can you imagine trying to sell a 3 megapixel camera to people today? Their head would explode if you said it was 3 megapixels. So after we did the move from film to digital, jumped into an Olympus camera, moved from it, went back to Canon very shortly after that. Started with the 10D, and then we went 30D, 50D, all the way up. And then we worked ourselves up to the Canon R6. And then when I started the YouTube channel, I decided to go with Lumix because I like so much of their digital, and it's a very good camera that does both. Lumix does really good on photography and really good on video. It's probably my favorite camera for that, but that's my opinion. What's good for me may not be good for you. But any brand of camera out there right now, I believe, is excellent. Find one that you like, find a menu that's easily understandable, and maybe base your camera buying decision off the lenses that you want. If you know the lenses that you need, look at the lenses and look at who makes mounts for them. If you're looking for a Nikon, if you like a Nikon lens, but it won't go on your Lumix, you may want to switch to Nikon. If you want to base your system around your lenses, you can do that too. Or you can drop me a message down at the bottom, give me a few ideas of what you want to shoot, and we can all give you our opinion. Be glad to help you out. Really, the two cameras I use right now the most are my Lumix G9 Mark II. This is a micro four thirds camera that I use. We're recording on the Lumix S5 Mark II, and it's full frame. And I've still got some Canon gear. I've still got the Canon 6D and the 70D and a bunch of the others. I had 14 Canon cameras sitting around at one time, so I made the switch to Lumix. I sold a lot of the Canon gear. But anyway, guys, that is it. We're making a short video. I know I've been putting out some really long videos lately, and I apologize for that. I just wanted to get that series, The Truth About Photography, in. So go back if you get a chance. Start with February 1st and watch. There's about 15 or 16 videos in there. I think you guys might can learn something in there, hopefully. I tried to give out as much information as I possibly could to help you, whether you're new or you've been going for a while. So I appreciate your time more than anything, guys. We got a great group here, so if you have any questions, drop a note down at the bottom and we'll be glad to help you out. Appreciate it, and you guys have a great day. Thank you.